You're listening to Inclusive AF with Jackye Clayton and Katee Van Horn.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Inclusive AF podcast. I'm Jackye Clayton.
And this is Katee Van Horn.
We are getting so good at that intro.
Yeah. It's as if we've done this a time or two.
I think it's, 80 plus. At some point, it's going to be good, and that'll be our last day. Well, no, as soon as we absolutely hit it, we'll be like, oh, I think we're done. I think we're done here. No, just kidding. I am so glad to get together today. And we have a special guest with us, an author I'm very excited for everyone to get to know. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Brenda. Welcome to the Inclusive AF podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I get so tickled when people refer to me as an author. I'm beginning to get used to it.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm Brenda Harrington. I am the founder and president of Adaptive Leadership Strategies. We are an executive coaching and leadership development facilitation firm. Basically, I avoid very intentionally using the term training because we don't try to teach and tell anyone how to do anything, but we try to create learning spaces for people to develop and grow into the best possible version of themselves. We do a lot of work with global leaders in a variety of different sectors and disciplines. And I'd say at this point, my intention is to work with people who demonstrate a commitment to making the world a better place.
I love that. No pressure.
No pressure.
World. I love that so much. I mean, and I love the learning spaces because, I think so many people do refer to it as training, and there's such a stigma going in, like immediately, the results are skewed everywhere depending on who's receiving that message. But I love the learning space. We all have something to learn.
We all have something to learn, and we all get to wherever we can get to, and it's okay. All right. But the work I say to clients all the time, this cannot be more important to me than it is to you. So you've got to do the work in order for this to be meaningful. And that's really the big difference, in my opinion.
And, we've heard that from a couple of our guests, the same thing that, and it is so true. It's I can bring you along on the journey, but it's your journey and you have to take it wherever you're going to take it and pick up what you can from what we're working on and what we're talking about. But everyone has to take that accountability and take that responsibility for what they want to do with what you're bringing to them. So tell us a little bit about, what makes your coaching, your leadership, learning, what makes it different from some of the others maybe that we have experienced before?
Well, I don't know what you've experienced, but I will say that, and this will sound a little bit kitschy and cliche to other coaches and people who have experienced coaching perhaps, but we really are committed to the whole meeting people where they are commitment, okay? And you just used one of my favorite words when you said, I think you used the term accountability, they're the expectations, right? And so we really start with a clean slate. I curate everything, so there's nothing off the shelf. And, with all due respect, there are some beautiful models and programs and kind of pre-cooked facilitation kits, which is fine. We use elements of different things, but, no two clients are alike, no two engagements are alike. We really start with deep listening and really trying to understand what will make a difference for the client. And trying to see how we can build around that to make it a meaningful experience that's sustainable, right? It doesn't help if after the engagement, you put everything away and move on and you're not using it. So we want to make sure it's accessible and that it's something that will add long-term value.
I love that you said that, and you're right. It's funny at Textia where I work. I always say we're a bubble inside of a vacuum. And then when we go out, we have to share those learnings. And we just went to a conference. I took my team to a conference. And when I was like, I really want you to go to all of the different, DEIB, it was recruiting a conference. I was like, I want you to go to all the sessions and listen. And their eyes got so big and they were like, are people still talking about this like this? And it's like, yes. And these are people that are trying to help and they're still learning. They are in different parts. And I think it takes, I think when you're very, I was very excited when I got into the role and started doing this research so many years ago, but then you realize we're really not all in the same place and have all these different learnings up to this point. There's times where you see someone and you're like, I've read about this before. Like someone says something and you're like, whoa, it happened in real life.
Yeah. And it's, you remind me of a couple conversations I've had with clients recently. And they said, I try to tell my people and, I let them know and I'm hearing all this, transmit. And I'm saying, hold it. Let's listen. Let's ask some questions. Let's open up. Yeah, but I'm sure no, you're not sure of anything. Okay. And it is so important to listen actively and deeply. And I had one client come back to me just recently, and I'm not even going to refer to gender. I'm just going to say the person said, I asked the person, what it was like to do this exercise that we had talked about. And the person said to me, it was illuminating. I had no idea. I could not have imagined that this person didn't know this and was thinking about this way, because you haven't asked, right? You're making assumptions that things are a certain way. And, that's how we end up not communicating effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think that, just what you just shared there about the listening, we talk so much about listening and believing and, really taking in what someone is sharing with you and then also believing it, which is taking it that step further as well. And so I love some of the things from your book, and Jack and I were chatting a little bit earlier, just, hey, some of the things that were in the book that we found very interesting. And I think especially for, Black women in the workplace, that no, you are not crazy. What has happened and is happening to you is real. And, that's such a, this was just an excerpt from your book. And it is like, yes, it's such a critical piece that it's not just, hey, these are my stories, or this is what I believe to be true. It is, no, this is real. And I think that's a piece that's just missing so many times in these conversations as well.
And what we have to do is, we're judgmental beings as humans. And what we have to do is really be willing to suspend judgment. And that's hard. One of the easiest things, why are you crying? Because I'm upset. You have no reason to cry. Well, you don't know that. This might not be something that's upsetting to you or makes you emotional, but that doesn't mean that you get to judge how it's making me feel, right? And so, we sputter things like that often, and we have to really be willing to take a deep breath and step back and just let a person be, and stand in whatever is happening for them at the moment, and be willing to hold that space. And, it's just hard for people to do.
I just find so many people, like, they'll give you, if you listen long enough, they will give you the answers to the test. They will give you all of it. But if you start cutting people off, you don't have the whole story and you can never get back there because you're dealing with their perception, and then they're dealing with your perception, and it's like, wait, can we just start over?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like shouting at someone who speaks a different language. It's not going to increase their ability to understand you. Right?
Yes. And I think what is interesting, especially as a Black woman trying to navigate through some of these spaces where there has been a history of gaslighting, but then you're also othered. So you're not really sure, like, did this happen to you? Was this, does this sound familiar? And even within those spaces, you have to be really careful and listen. And there are times where I'm like, I'm responding to something that happened to me, not something that necessarily happened to you. And I need to listen to you.
Well, not only that, but, and thank you it sounds like you've opened the book. I appreciate that. I start talking about identity because the two of us could have exactly the same experience or be subjected to the same circumstances and react very differently, have a different response, wear it differently, all of that based on our identity, based on our whatever, our history, our beginnings, all of those things. And so, you really have to leave a margin for that and honor whatever it is, it's bringing up for people.
And I think we're working on doing the racial healing handbook with the group. And in that, I don't think people recognize the belief system. A lot of this happened on your own. You're 2 years old. It's how you're perceiving the reality based on people around you. And that's when you formulate your decision, like the same of drinking out of a glass and eating with a knife and fork. And it's ingrained into who you are. And you might, because of your path, might never have an opportunity to revisit that feeling. And that's when that unconscious bias sneaks in, because it's literally, you're like, oh my gosh, I know the way I think I'm supposed to respond, but that doesn't feel right.
Right, exactly.
Something is not right.
Because that's how somebody told you to respond.
That's right.
Right. Or you watch somebody else respond that way. Yeah. Very true.
And I think it's also just the validation of feelings of exactly what you just said earlier of my reaction to something might be totally different than Jackie's reaction to something because of all of that kind of junk and all that stuff that has happened to get us to today. And I think that's the piece that is always so interesting when that light bulb goes off for people, that they're like, oh, okay, so, this isn't a one-time thing that there was a microaggression and this person reacted. It was, no, this month, this year, this whatever decade, there have been a gazillion different microaggressions. And so this was that tipping point where they started crying or had a reaction or whatever it might be. And I think that's the piece that also, once people get that and kind of can go, oh, this is why they reacted that way, or this isn't just this moment. I think that's just such a good learning space, because I think it is hard if you have not experienced to go, how can I put myself in their shoes or empathize, or again, just listen and believe what they have to say. And that's such a hard lesson to learn for folks.
And I think that, there are some circumstances, many circumstances where you really just can't stand in another person's shoes. You can, and all you can do is hold a space and listen.
Yeah.
And I think that, that the intention of taking that stance is one thing. It's where we say, oh, but it's not that bad. And we start to become dismissive and we minimize and, we try to make excuses that things really move in the wrong direction. So, it's a time to make a choice, and it's about the choice that people make that can make the difference.
But I want to know, like, what's interesting to me, then you go to the coaching space.
Mm-hmm.
So you're already talking to people who know everything. Like they know everything. They're leading people. They're the ones people go to, right? And you have to say, let's look at it. Let's look at it a different way. As an executive coach, especially, I just think, what is that like?
Well, it's interesting because so many people, and maybe not in their current role, but so many people at some point were promoted, elevated, moved forward for the wrong reasons. You were a great whatever, and now we're going to, put you in charge of all these people and da da da. No development, no anything, no preparation for that. Just, good luck. And so, people, you really have to get people to a point, and this is where story and metaphor can be so meaningful, because you really have to get to an opening, a point of vulnerability, and something that you can begin to work open to kind of to crack the window, to get to larger conversations. And it's there. Sometimes you have to work harder for it, sometimes we utilize different psychometric instruments like assessments or 360s and things like that. And that type of objective feedback and information can be very valuable for those circumstances. But you just really have to, get to that, I call it that tender space with the person. And that will usually help you to flip the coin.
I've got to flip a coin.
Okay. Well,
I'm like, maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is. But I feel like I'm seeing at least more people getting really active with coaching. Do you see more people getting active with coaching now than in the times before? Or is it I just noticed it more?
No, I think you're right. I think that there's greater acceptance. There was a time that people thought that it was punitive, that they were being called to the principal's office, and they didn't see it as a tool for growth and development. And so I think that there is broader acceptance, there's greater understanding of what coaching is and what it can do. And I also think, honestly, the pandemic helped because I hate to say this, but, okay, last resort, nothing else is working. What else can I try? I mean, people were on the edge in many cases over whether it was leading remote teams, whether it was, loss of career, whatever it was. They were really more open and receptive to alternative interventions, let's say.
So you talk about something, and I would love for you to just dig in a little bit and share with the folks that are listening. Yeah. You talk about the veiled discriminators. Can you share a little bit more about what that means and what that is and how that impacts the workplace?
There are so many things that people are not willing to talk about, and so they won't bring it up, but they will hold it against you. And one of the landmines, I will say, can be around use of standard English, grammar, diction, just general communication. There are others, it could be appearance. We've gone through this whole thing with our hair and, the Crown Act and all of these kinds of things. Anything that people can use to make judgments about. And so, I've been in the room, in conversations as member of executive teams where, well, no, we're not going to let that person do the presentation, or it's rating time. And, well, the communication, have you had a conversation about it? Well, no, because they're afraid that, there'd be some pushback or that they'd be called out for discrimination, all these kinds of things. And so it's unspoken, it's never discussed. And, unfortunately, people go years and full careers, with these things, just not knowing, not understanding why, they're not able to move to the next level or break through particular barriers. Unfortunately, for us, it's an indictment, and for, people in the dominant group, is, oh, he's a little quirky, or, it's just, And I talk in the book about, someone who said something, I'd never heard that type of sentence structure, quite frankly, a sentence that started with, ever who, and I stopped the person. What did you say? And he said, ever who's going to do this? And I thought, wow, what would have happened if I started the sentence with ever who? They would have been packing the box for me. Okay. But it's okay for him to say that, so those are the kinds of things that fall into the category of veiled discriminators, in my opinion.
It makes me think, one thing, it's like, I know we're not a monolith. However, there are some shared experiences. And I remember doing a session and a woman crying, talking about it, and everybody in the room that was in the dominant group, they were trying to make excuses for the situation. She was talking about somebody talking down to her, standing over her, and she felt threatened because they couldn't get out of the chair. And everyone was like, well, maybe they're in a bad mood, or maybe they were this, or maybe there was that. And the person left, and at the end of it, someone said, "Did you know who that was?" And I was like, "No, I did not know." And they were like, "It's the dean. That was the dean of the law school that was explaining that situation." And like during the course of that, we stopped because I'm like, "No, you don't get to guess what that is. Like, stop guessing for other people. Let's talk about how it made her feel. What was her perception? She was the only one there." And so I think that happens a lot and I've had to explain this on behalf of other people and myself, where I'm like, you wouldn't know that because they wouldn't talk to you like that. Like, how many times have you said, and I love that you've narrowed in on this, where you've told somebody and they're like, "Oh, they wouldn't do that." No, they wouldn't do that to you. But if you look like me, they might, and I really honestly think this is a bigger issue. Like, I wish, because people honestly don't believe you. And you can be an executive running a team and explaining that this is what has gone on, and people constantly will say, "I don't think that's what that person meant." Oh, you're on mute, Brenda.
Yeah, no, you're overreacting. Oh, surely you misunderstood. No, I didn't misunderstand. I recognize it. I've experienced it enough to know exactly what it is. So
that's right.
Yeah.
We had somebody, and when we were he said, the way he said it was, he said, "Black people know white people better than white people remember white people." And we were all like, audible gasp. Like, I'm not sure if that's what you meant. But what he meant, I think, my version of that is, when you're oppressed and when you are looking to make sure that you are safe, you are paying a different level of attention to people doing things to you.
Absolutely.
Like, you just think this is normal. I'm trying to make sure that I'm going to be safe. I don't want to get picked up or arrested for walking out with this pack of gum. So I'm going to have my receipt out, and I'm looking left and right, and I want to know who else is there. And that's something that's constant. Whereas other people are like, oh no. And I think that's what people don't realize. We've been studying for a long time. You can start seeing the pattern. So it's like, trust the person who's telling you that they feel like they've discriminated. They've been paying a lot more attention in those cases.
And when I think about some of the feedback I've gotten, I've been surprised, honestly. Some of the people told me that they've read the books. "Oh, I've learned so much, and I had no idea, and it made me rethink some things, and all of that." And so it's interesting to me. But why would you think about it if it doesn't impact your reality? Why would you think about it, right? And so it's the conversations have been enlightening.
I just feel like it's necessary because there's so many people that are quick to refer to themselves as allies. If you don't understand the disparities of other people, that's impossible. That's number one. Number two, you can't give yourself that title.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's, one of the things, and I'm remembering the speaker as well. And it was such a moment in time that he was sharing that, because it was yes, of course, those in the out group are studying those in the dominant in group. But then it comes back to that assimilation. Like, why does it have to be assimilation versus an add to whatever is going on? So I think, that was the other piece to me that was like so outstanding or so remarkable about his comments, were also the fact, like, it has always been kind of that assimilate or die rule versus why can't we add to and get better because of the differences that we have and because of who's coming to the table. And that part was also like, it's just, we have gotten to this space where hopefully people are more aware. And to your point, reading books like yours to say, I didn't know, but it's also okay, hurry up and get there, because we've been talking about this for way too long.
Way too long. You're using the term add to, which is interesting to me, because I think the challenge is that there seems to be, and we're hearing all this stuff now about replacement, Okay. And so there seems to be this notion that, anything that benefits me is taking away from someone else. Right. Which is sad. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's sad. But there are a lot of people who think that way because they believe, their very basic, their very fundamental belief is that there should be a double standard.
Which is, as we're studying and we were it's Filipino American Heritage or History Month. And as we were looking, I was looking at the story about how there were open borders to people from the Philippines, right? And it's the second highest population of Asian Americans in the United States. And people are like, really? Like, how did we get this far? We have to study history. Like, the people have gotten this far without understanding that this perpetuating, it's not just the history we weren't taught. It's that these things were going on at the same time as and it happens over and over and over, which is why we have to learn what's happening. And part of that is acknowledging the way it is at the workforce. And the big piece that I think that your book can help people understand is, like, really, if it's not about we're not ready for me to bring my whole self to work. I just want to be able to work. Like, let's start with that. Let's start with me not having to worry about whatever outfit I have on, or my hair, to your point, or my accent, or my word choice. Like, let me just be able to go to work and not feel othered. Let's start with that.
Not feel othered. Exactly.
I can bring my whole self.
Right.
And I feel like I will let you know, it's not going to be because you say, well, we welcome everybody to bring their whole selves.
Yeah.
So this must be all of you. And I always say, you do not want me to bring my whole self to work. You are not ready to receive that. You are not. You are not.
Oh boy.
And it's because, like, it just reminds me of when I was young and my mom would get upset if I would say something. She would say, I'm about to hurt your feelings. And that's what I tell people on my team. I'm like, oh, you don't want me to bring my whole self because I will hurt your feelings on some of these situations. And it's not on purpose, but we have to be able to have these discussions at work. And that's the problem. They think because you go and you're happy and you're doing your job, and maybe you're doing a job, that everything must be okay, without understanding that struggle.
Well, I would challenge happy. You go and you're smiling.
Right. Not happy. Right.
You're collegial and you're right. Exactly. Yeah. You're not, breaking chairs. You're not,
maybe.
Maybe. But but I don't know, if you peel back, if you really get to happiness in that. Yeah.
No, content. We'll say,
right.
Like you said, not throwing chairs.
You're going along to get along.
So what of you mentioned stories.
Yes.
And, so I would love for you to share, for those listeners who haven't read your book, share one of the stories or one of the examples that you give in the book about some of these kind of tools that you're giving and some of the things that you're trying to help people learn through your book.
It's hard to isolate any one story, but the central theme is that you've got to be more active and less passive, and not, I'm sorry, just give the benefit of the doubt and write it off, as, oh, well, I might have misunderstood. Sometimes perhaps that's the case, but I think you always have to stop and take time to, really assess what's happening, because we don't have the luxury of enough time to make up for the things that we're trying to accomplish. And so in the book, I really tried to help people take a more strategic approach to their circumstances, to their careers, to conversations, to holding people accountable. Oh, you're doing a great job. I can see you taking on more responsibility one day. Well, that sounds great, but what does that mean exactly? What do I have to do? Where can I improve? And things like that. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, veiled discriminators. I can't tell you how many fingers I've almost lost by trying to help people and say, can I have a conversation with you? I heard you say her and I. Actually, it's she and I. And sometimes that's well received, and other times it's not. It doesn't go so well. And I just say, when people try to help you, accept it. At least think about it. And sometimes it doesn't come out right. We all, providing feedback is awkward. It's uncomfortable, and everybody doesn't do it well. But that doesn't mean the good intention is not there. And so I just really want people to not just accept what they're experiencing at face value and be willing to question. Just be willing to see if there's an opportunity for a different approach.
I love that. And I love where just the feedback piece as well. And Jackie's smiling, and I think I know why. Her CEO, Karen Schneider, is doing some work, and McKinsey has done some work as well, as we know, on feedback and women, especially women of color, not getting specific feedback, actionable feedback. And so it is that just keep taking on more. And, I saw something posted on LinkedIn the other day from a woman that was basically saying, and it's what we've all heard, just wait, they're going to come, they'll tap you on the shoulder, and at any minute now, you're going to get that promotion, that raise, that, whatever has been promised. And so it is just interesting. And I think the feedback piece is such a critical component for every leader to be aware of, how that can truly impact someone. And even if it is a language thing, the her and I, she and I thing, it might seem very simple, but if that will help someone and will help them kind of move forward to be able to give that feedback, but then also receiving that feedback. And, that's just two pieces of the puzzle. It's just that struck me as you were speaking. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really critical.
We all need it. We're not perfect beings, and it's hard for us to know the most self-aware among us. We don't really know how other people are experiencing us, good, bad, or indifferent. It's data we all need to have. So,
and we haven't learned, people are hesitant to give feedback, and then we haven't learned to receive feedback. I mean, the best piece of feedback, and I was really angry at the time when someone gave me this feedback. I was so mad.
That means it was probably really good.
It was life-changing, and I use it daily. They told me, the only right response to feedback is thank you. I don't even know what I was talking back. I don't even know what I was saying. But I took that and have implemented it all the time. I explain to people, say thank you, write it down, go talk with your best friend, go talk to somebody. But look at the lesson there, because you have to think nobody wants to, there are some evil people on the planet, right? But very rarely.
I love giving feedback. I love it.
It's rare that someone would said, I'm going to go give somebody feedback all day. They've thought about it. They want to give the feedback. It's something that they've thought about. And so even if it's not really cool, there's got to be some truth to it, even if it's perception. And so you have to take a step back and see how you can grow in that moment,
Yeah.
And don't argue with someone's perception.
Well, right. And many people don't see it as arguing, but they say, well, what I meant was what I was trying to do, but let me help explain to you. Forget it. Just say, as you said, thank you, accept it, and then go do something with it on your own. Maybe come back and ask more questions once you've had a chance to process, but let it be. Let it be.
Yeah. Yes, to all of these things that you all are saying, because I think that's one of the things when I have taught people how to give feedback, I also talk about how to receive feedback, because I think that's also such a skill set, because all of us you do want to defend and go, oh, you don't understand what I was trying to say. And I've been so guilty of that throughout my career. And it is that just stop, go process it with your best friend, with whomever, and then come back. And like you said, ask questions, learn more. Because it's also the whole, if you're a leader and if someone came and gave you feedback, they will never do it again if they are if you try to defend yourself or tell them why they're wrong, it doesn't land. So
right. Now you touched on something else, Katee, go talk to a friend or something. So in the book, I talk a lot about not just mentors and sponsors, but really developing an advisory board, your own little advisory board. And I think that is so important. You need to hear from all the voices in the room, whether they're people who think like you, have opposing views. I like those because that's what we need. Really, we don't need to be surrounded by people that only tell us what we want to hear. And so I think it really is important to stand up a formal or informal group of people that you can rely on to socialize things with and talk through things with and get different points of view.
It's the truth tellers you need. Truth tellers. I think I have like too many truth tellers. I know there's been times where I'm like, when Katie's like, and now that we're done, have you talked to your therapist about this? I'm like, ooh, is I've triggered something? Well, yeah, maybe just, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Like, are you feeling okay? Because there are so many times where it can be your friend as long as they are that truth. They're going to tell you the truth. And you need those people that have your best interest in mind that can do that. And I especially think, as I've noticed for me, as people are going through their own journey of inclusion and belonging and what that means, while they're going on their journey, I have to double down on my group of people that I trust and feel comfortable with, so I can get through. And I feel like because they're in a different place, and so it's important to have those people. And I'm glad that you said that. Okay, so we need a coach, we need the personal board of directors. What else do we need, Brenda?
You just you need to know where your line in the sand is. You need to know where your line in the sand is. You need to really have clarity around not only your values, but what's important to you. And this is what will lead you to working with some of the exercises in the book, because so many times we are assaulted by things that just are an affront to our values and our beliefs. And we take a deep breath and we swallow and say, oh, but that direct deposit, oh, the 401k match, and oh, but the pension, and oh, but this office and all of this. And then we yield. And when you start doing that, that's when you really begin to lose who you are. And so I think it really is important, and it's scary. I get that. I also realize I have a higher risk tolerance than most people, but I think that you can work yourself to a place that, maybe it takes you to just rethinking what your priorities are and what matters most in your life, not at the particular point in time, but over the arc, okay, over the long haul, and really getting clear on what you want, what you don't want, and what you're not willing to accept. And it's amazing. It is amazing what can happen if you stay committed to that. Okay. We all have this fear, that terrible things will happen if, we push back or if we contradict. Ask yourself, what is the worst that can happen? Right. And really process what the real response is to that, what the answer to that question.
I like to play that game quite a bit of what's the worst that can happen. And I do with my sister will laugh when she hears this because she has heard me say it so many times. It's what's the worst that can happen? Okay, so you lose your job, you lose your house, whatever it might be. I'm in a very fortunate place that I have 95 brothers and sisters, so I can just go live with one of them. So like I do have that support system in place. But it is like playing that out in your head of what's the worst that can happen does get you to a place of, okay, what is my line in the sand? What are those things that I will not accept? But I will also say, and I'm going to out Jackye slightly here. I think Jackye has been in that situation and we've had that conversation and it's gotten to a much better place because of the line in the sand of, I will not tolerate this. I'm not doing this anymore. I need better. And here are my expectations. And now she's I think all of us are in a much better place when we do draw that line, because it is also it's where energy goes, where your mind goes, that's where your energy goes, all those things. So.
And when you don't do that, you're giving people permission to say and do and treat you any old kind of way, right? However they want to. And it has nothing to do, you're not controlling that, you're not regulating that, the dynamics of that relationship, that interaction at that point. And you really are relinquishing power to others.
That's when life starts happening to you instead of for you. Like it just happens all around, all these things. And you're like, I don't understand. Right. Well, you did that, right? You did that. And I think it gets easier as when you look at those situations, when you start learning in your career, oh yeah, I'm not doing that again. I'm not putting myself in that piece again. And I do feel, again, you can learn those lessons. And sometimes you're like, I have a 22-year-old where I have to say, maybe the gift you're receiving right now is to never have to do that ever again. Like maybe you just needed to go through this to learn where not to go. You zigged so you didn't have to zag, and we'll just keep going. But so many people, especially the most interesting thing as I became an executive were the phone calls that I was getting from other Black women who wanted to do this. And the very first thing that I discussed with them are what are their job requirements? What are they doing right now in their job, not their title? And what is their salary? And we have to start there a lot of times where it's like, and I've worked here for 25 years and I've never gotten a raise and I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do know what to do. But it's a scary place. And so books like this, where people are like, no, you're not alone. There are people here to support you. And I think that is helpful. But I'm grateful that you wrote this book, Brenda, but also grateful that people are sharing this knowledge publicly so that we can, it's not, there are groups of people that need to know and have an example, right? Of, no, you can get through this. You can get through this. And no, you're right. You do deserve more. And help coach through that, especially at work where, right now there are lots of different opportunities. We know that there are people looking and looking for opportunities to talk to people that are underrepresented, but you have to make sure it's a safe place for you. So if you don't draw that line, so many people have gotten pulled in the last couple of years, taken a job, maybe it was for the money, but then only went to know that they have zero support, zero clout, zero say, zero impact. Somebody asked me the other day, how many people are on your diversity team? I was like, well, it's me and I have a program manager, but there's only 100 of us. And she said, oh, I don't have a program manager and there's 4,000 of us. What?
Yeah. The money is never enough. And people look at me like I've landed from another planet when I say that, but the money is never enough. When things really get tough and you find yourself in a place that you really don't want to be, that's typically when you find that out. But people go for the gold, right? And that's you typically insufficient, when you're really facing challenging issues and challenging times.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Brenda, the way we like to end every episode is with sharing one thing from this episode you want to make sure folks have heard. So we're going to do that. And then I also want you to share, where can folks find you, find, your information on the coaching programs that you do and where they can get your book, all that good stuff. We'll put a link to your book and your website on the show notes as well. But what is one thing you want to make sure that the folks listening to this heard and take away?
I think the one thing I want people to be clear on is that you don't have to settle, that, you have to participate actively and in a meaningful way in your own development and professional growth. But you never have to, you never have to settle. And I stopped short of saying, don't take no for an answer, because that sounds a little bit harsh, but we can't afford to take no for an answer, right? I think you have to be willing to question and think critically and apply all of the things that you apply on behalf of the organization, the institution, or the company that you work for to your own circumstances. Okay. I spoke at a conference a few weeks ago, and I asked how many people had participated. Group of about, in this particular session, probably about 100 people. And I asked how many people had participated in strategic planning activities for their jobs. And, everybody raised their hand. I said, how many of you have participated in strategic planning activities for yourselves? And it was one or two hands that went up, right? So be intentional, get clarity around what you want, and create a plan and work the plan.
Awesome. Love it. Jackye?
I am still at that, draw that line in the sand. Really do that as before you start moving forward, because you have to know where you're going, what you're willing to take, so that you know what questions to ask to make sure. How do you know when it's So I think that is what I want people to take away.
And mine is around the advisory board, because I think that is something that, especially women, we do a not great job of getting the folks around us that can help us strategically, and from just hey, I've had a similar experience to, just all the different things that if you have folks around you, mentors, allies, all of the things in your advisory team, how much stronger you can be. But it ties back to something that, you share in your book around, you're not the only one that had this experience. And I think for so many people of color, it is such an isolating experience that to go, oh, someone else has experienced this, and I can go out and find that person or people to talk to about it. Like, I think that's such a huge piece to the puzzle, because it is scary when you're the only one in the room, in the company, in the whatever, to push back and to draw those lines and all of these things. When you go, has anyone else done this? Has anyone else experienced this? Whatever it might be. And so that advisory team, those folks that are going to help you and share those experiences, and also folks that haven't had that experience that can give you a different viewpoint, I think are just so critical to everyone's success in life and, and professionally. So yeah, that would be mine. It's just kind of the advisory.
Yeah. And, it's lonely, when you're experiencing these things, and the first place we go to is guilt. What did I do? What could I have done differently? What's wrong with me? All of these things. And the answer is typically nothing, right? And so much of what we accept, what we begin to wear, is a reflection of somebody else's stuff, is theirs. That they are generously overlaying on you, right? It's a template that reflects generously. Yeah. So absolutely.
All right, Brenda, where can folks find you? Where can they look you up?
The book, the book, Access Denied, Addressing Workplace Disparities and Discrimination, has its own website. It is access-denied.net. And I can also be found on Instagram as author B. Harrington. For coaching and executive leadership facilitation, adaptiveleadershipstrategies.com is the website.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a great conversation. we say this every time, I think, Jackye, like just oh my God, this is the best one yet. Oh my
I know.
God, this is the best.
I know.
But it's so true, because I think every conversation that we're having is so enlightening, and so thank you for taking the time, truly.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Nice meeting both of you.
Yes, you as well. Well, this is the Inclusive AF podcast. My name is Katee Van Horn.
And I'm Jackye Clayton. Bye.
Bye.